But we'll go ahead and go on to Dr. Judd Miller, who is running for the District 35 Senate seat. Dr. Miller is a fourth-generation Idahoan who comes from farming stock in Fremont County. He is a retired family and emergency room physician with 31 years experience in Eastern Idaho. He and his wife, Catherine, have raised 5 children and now have 30 grandchildren. Dr. Miller has long had an interest in the principles of freedom and of what makes good government, having taught Constitution classes and actively supported conservative candidates for many years. He is pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, and pro-Second Amendment. He stands for local control of educational standards and for leveling the property tax playing field. So we will turn the time over to Dr. Judd Miller.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Elodie, and those who have joined us. I'm happy to be here today. In 1787, in Philadelphia, there was a constitutional convention we're all aware of. President George Washington presided there, and he sat in an old wooden chair that had a carving on the back of it with a sun that was half above the horizon. At the end of that convention, Benjamin Franklin spoke up and said, "I've often looked at that setting sun, or that sun, on the back of the president's chair and wondered if it was a rising or a setting sun. Through all the debates, through all of the challenges that we faced, sometimes I wondered, but now that the document is finished, we've signed it, I know that it's a rising sun, and that it will bode much good for the American people." That's paraphrased, of course. I feel the same way. There's a lot of challenges in our state and federal government, but I have great hope that as conservatives are coming forth, and they are, to take a stand, that we can make a difference and we can restore what we once had. I was asked today by a friend, why am I running for this public office? And my answer was, similar to those that have already been mentioned, I have studied and taught and supported conservative principles for many years. I've supported conservative campaigns and worked for those who I felt had something to offer. Since retiring a few years ago, I paid more attention to what's happening in Boise and in Washington, D.C., and I have some concerns. I've watched a drift that concerns me very much, and even though I don't have an extensive background in public service, I have a handle on the principles that are needed to make decisions that I believe will benefit our state and hold us closer to the limited government goal that many of us have. Seems like every time the legislature meets, the can gets kicked down the road toward more government, more spending, and I would like to be part of the group that holds that back. Let me mention a few issues that are key to me, although there are many more, but these are ones that are very important to me. I'm definitely pro-life. I've delivered many hundreds of babies in my time, and I have a great reverence for life and for the rights of the unborn. I'm very much pro-family. It is obvious to all of us that the strong family unit is the core of our society and the greatest resource that our state has. And that a marriage between a man and a woman is essential to that stable family and preparing our children to take their part and fill the role that they're expected to fill to keep our freedoms in the state and in the nation as they are, or to restore them as they should be. I'm very much pro-Second Amendment, and I belong to all the right organizations there, but let me just say this. If guns kill people, then spoons make you fat and pencils misspell words. Think about that. I'm concerned about the federal encroachment into our state. The 35% of our state budget comes from the federal government. That's not how it's supposed to be. I'm concerned about medical care, since that's been my livelihood for many years. I'm concerned about the top-down, forcible program that has been given to us, which we can see hasn't worked out very well. and recently has been expanded due to the ballot initiative 2 years ago, which now our state leaders are scrambling to find out how we're going to pay for it. The legislature for 3 years in a row turned down Medicaid expansion because they saw what it did to the budgets of the surrounding states that accepted it. Well, now the governor has had to scramble to find some funds to pay for this first year's expenses in that regard. The counties have been told that they need to pay 30% of the state's share of this program. And so our counties are scrambling to know whether to raise property taxes, sales taxes, where is that money going to come from? That shouldn't have to be an issue they've had to deal with. The other issue is education, and there's a lot that could be said there, but my concern is the top down, from the federal government down to the local, the standards, the curriculum that's been given us, which due to some voting in the legislature, seems to be on its way out, but there's a lot of bridges to cross before that will really happen. Education needs to be maintained and directed from a local level. Parents have a great interest. Communities should have a great interest, and not all communities are the same across the United States, and they need to have a say in what happens in their education of their children. Well, in closing, I'd like to just say that I know many of the legislators from this side of the state, and they're all good people, and they all have sincere intent to do good for the state. But I see a great difference in how they vote. And from those that I know, the difference is those who have studied the intent of the founding fathers, what they intended by the things that they put in the Constitution, and the intent of the state constitution, which very closely parallels the conservative federal constitution. Those who understand the intent of those documents vote very conservatively and have voting records like Carrie has, as she mentioned to you. Those who don't, who take each issue as an island and try to tie it to what's going to be good for now, for our state, vote on things that down the road will come back to bite us. And I'm hoping that I can join the group of conservative legislators who are bringing the needle back toward limited government, away from more and a more expensive government. And I thank you for your time, and I will take questions if you have them.
Dr. Miller, thank you very much for what you said. It really hits home, I think, with most of us who care about our freedom and our liberty and our Constitution. I'm really glad that you have the medical background you have. I think that can be very useful when it comes to all the problems that Reclaim Idaho have caused us with this initiative that they've done. They're a very destructive group. And I just want to say I appreciate you running and volunteering for this. Well, I realize it's a paid position, but in your case, it's probably more volunteering for the public service. And I don't know you. I know Carrie very well, and you seem to be cut out of the same mold. And I just wanted to thank you for being there and running.
Well, thank you very much. Let me say this. I do have a concern with the medical issues. Years ago, when I was researching what can be done about the expense of healthcare in our nation, I ran across a concept called free market medicine. And that is, it was theorized by a group of economists and medical experts, where they looked at what would happen if we took the federal government entirely out of the medical care field and out of the medical insurance field, and treated it just like any other business. Let it be a free market business and find its own level. Do you know what they found if that happened? Costs for medical care plummeted far, far below where they are now, because competition between hospitals, competition between practitioners, allowed transparency. People could choose and know what they were going to be paying, which is very different than the way it is now, those of you who have been involved in medical care. that hasn't even been on the table, and I don't expect that it will be on the table anytime soon. But we need to be aware that such a thing would be a wonderful goal for us. And as we try to separate ourselves from the influence of the federal government and their money, which always comes with strings, we can gradually move toward that goal. And with some education on our part, we may hold that out as something that can be achieved if we work toward that. Thank you for that question.
Judd, this is Don. I'd like to echo the last speaker's comments. I really appreciate you running again. And I'd just like to say that what I see happen repeatedly is we have what we think is a good conservative candidate, and he gets over in Boise or DC, and the colors change. And I've looked at that over and over. Why is that happening? And it seems to me really it's the pork barrel. You know, they're enticed by the money, and also the general atmosphere in these legislatures is to get more money from any source, taxpayers, the government, whatever, and sacrifice all these principles you just mentioned for that. And I'm looking for candidates who will stick with their principles and not go for the pork barrel. So you sure got my support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let me say this. I've wondered the same question. Why do people go over there and start out fairly conservative and always drift to the left? My conclusion has been, and like yours, the leadership, which have been there a long time and who have drifted to the left themselves, are in the face of these legislators every day. And the lobbyists are in the face of these legislators every day. And once in a while, they receive a letter from home or a phone call from home, people who are following the issues and have an opinion. And maybe there's more than I suspect, but I don't think it balances what they're getting over there. And it takes a very strong person not to drift. You don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I can be strong and I can be unpopular. And if I only last for one session and follow the principles that I'm telling you, that's fine. If the public likes what I vote for, and like Carrie can have a proven record, then I will stay as long as they can use me there. Thank you for that question.